All right, good evening, everyone. I am going to call the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission to order for our Thursday, September 7th, 2023, 7 p.m. meeting. And if, Ruth, would you mind doing your roll call?
Supervisor Galloway.
Here.
Supervisor Andrews.
Here.
Supervisor O'Brien. Mr. Smith. Supervisor Herron.
Here.
Ms. Wilkinson.
Here.
Supervisor Barlow. Supervisor Jones. Supervisor Reed.
Here.
Supervisor Rutherford. Councilor Payne.
Here.
Commissioner Solly Yates.
Here. Thank you very much. So we do have a quorum established. And we do not need to vote on any electronic participation this evening. Move to item C. And this is a welcome back to the TJPDC. Mr. Solly Yates from the city. Welcome back, sir. There are some here, though, that may not have served with you prior. Would you like to give us a quick overview of yourself?
Sure. For the next week or so, I'm the chair of the Charlottesville Planning Commission. I know the next one is, but I can't tell you. I have been serving for a couple of years. I started with the Charlottesville Planning Commission in 2018. Working through the comp plan, got it done. Working through the zoning, didn't quite get that done. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen this year. Very momentous and challenging time, but so far pretty good.
And we can go around the table real quick for those to just recall out who we are, so that any new faces will be picked up. Supervisor Andrews.
Yeah, welcome back. Jim Andrews, Albemarle Counties in Northeastern. We served together for briefly.
And of course, Ted Galloway, Albemarle County, Center, I remember we served together.
Yeah, Greene County and Larson Bowser research together.
Andrew Wilkinson, Greene County, citizen rep, research together.
And I just missed you, Ernie Reed, I'm the Central District Supervisor. I think you know me.
Yeah, you two might have been interaction there. And the next welcome to the TJPDC for our new AmeriCorps Vista member.
We have Davey Snell behind us. She is coming from AmeriCorps Vista, working with Regional Housing Partnership to help with implementing the strategic plan. Do you want to say a couple words?
Sure. So like Christine said, I'm Davey Snell. I'm an AmeriCorps member, and I'm serving as the Vista here at TJPDC. I'm going to be working on building capacity and creating and refining some affordable housing tools for the region, and working on distributing the communication strategy for the Regional Housing Partnership. So I'm excited to get started.
Awesome. Welcome. Okay, that will take us to matters from the public, and any public members from the public. We got lost. The members of the public want to speak tonight. Any members online who want to speak? Sean, speaking to them. He doesn't even interact anymore. It's not like Sean. Email. All right, that will take us to 2C presentation. We have the program year 2022 home CDBG consolidated annual performance evaluation report. We finally have a cool name for something. Caper. This is the draft, Lori Jean.
Awesome. Good evening, commissioners. So I'll just speak really briefly tonight. So this is the report on the past year. As the city of Charlottesville is the only recipient of CDBG funds, I'll just talk a little about home, because this is our portion as the administrator of the home consortium is mostly focused on home. So we spent about $600,000 of home funds this year. A little bit is going to then be carrying over that we'll be spending in the coming program years. So this kind of just breaks down where it was spent. So there was one rental unit. It was actually purchased. Oh, good. Yeah. So one rental unit was purchased in Greene County. 30 homeowner rehabilitations were done throughout our region, and 4 down payment assistance. There were 4 households who received down payment assistance. So that was $24,000. And then if we jump to the next one, it just has the numbers. So 35 households were served with this funding this past year. And then the next slide just shows the match contributed. The city of Charlottesville contributes most of it over and above what is needed, which is wonderful, or what is required for match at least. And so we carry over into the next year anything extra. So we have a large backup of match funding, which is good. And then one thing that we also did this year, if we jump forward one more slide, is adopted new rehabilitation standards as the home consortium. So it just clarifies the inspection procedures, make sure that we're following all the uniform standards, as well as making sure that construction contracts are going to be viable to help hold us to that and enforce inspection requirements. So as far as the CAPER timeline, which is the last slide, we already completed the public comment period. City Council approved it this past Tuesday on their second reading. And our goal is to submit it to HUD for approval in the next week or so before it's due at the end of the month. So that's the quick summary. Any questions, feedback? Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
That will take us to item D, the public hearing on the 2022 CDB paper. Yeah, we're gonna open. We're gonna open public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this public hearing? Or this item in the public hearing? Online? We will now close the public hearing. And then I remember that'll be the next item later. And that will take us to, we have some presentations this evening. The first is the staff transition, because we've already done the introduction.
Yep, as some of you may know, Ian Baxter, regional housing planner, who's working also in areas of environment, has moved on to another opportunity. He, in his exit interview, had a lot of wonderful things to say about his experience here at TDP and working with all of the people that he met, both within our local governments and here on staff. We're excited for his new professional challenge, but that means we will also be looking to fill a planner position here. We're going to take a couple of weeks and we're going to kind of assess internally if there are some responsibilities that can be shared amongst other staff members before we list the position. We will soon have a position available. He was primarily working with regional housing partnership and on some of the housing insurance. That's all I got.
So that's it. So we will go to 3B, Blue Cigarette Tax Board update. David, you're going to handle it?
We've been coming to you all, I guess, about every 6 months to give you an update on the cigarette tax board, which has been up and running for a little over about 2 years actually since they were established. But just a quick refresher: cigarette tax board established in October, just a few years ago. 6 counties: City of Charlottesville, Town of Madison. Those jurisdictions all again levying cigarette tax effective January of 2022. We currently are working with more than 24 distributors. Sometimes it feels like on a daily basis, but really on a monthly basis. There's today monthly reports to TJPDC as the administrator of the board about their tax sold, stamps that they purchased, revenues that they collected, and then that is all processed primarily by Gretchen Thomas, our administrative assistant. From before, she does the lion's share of the work in tracking all the information, reconciling the amounts of money that need to go out to the jurisdictions that are members, working with Laura and finance to make that happen. And then every month, your government is getting a check for sales that are made in the jurisdiction, minus the distributors who take 2% discount for their administrative fees, and then TJPDC is administrative costs. Next slide. Usually try to give you an update on packs of cigarettes sold as well as revenue that's been generated. Most recent reports that we have are from July. You can see over $270,000 was collected during July. It's one of the highest months I think that we've had over the past 18 or so. And then there's a closing books on the fiscal year. You can see there's a 6-year figure about 1.38 million. It's interesting when I go back and I look at the initial estimates that we made, working with several staff in the jurisdictions, 2.5 years ago. I think we were projecting about 2.7 million per year. So you can see that we're pretty close to that. If you multiply that by 1.3. Total packs sold during the previous 6 months period, 4.5 million. And again, our administrative costs at TJPDC, again, looking at the initial estimates, have been running well on what we thought. So just over $50,000 for that 6 month period. Overall, we'll get into this in the next few slides. We have been seeing some slight decline. We have seen from year to year, and really, we think through the past 6 months of having the first time of being able to compare January to June to January to June. So we did see some decline both in the overall number of packs sold as well as the revenue, which is expected for those 6 months. And as I said, expenses tracking with the cash. Next slide. So I'm going to have a couple of slides here. First, on packs sold, I'm going to just kind of give you an overall view, and then we're going to break it down for each of the member jurisdictions in the next slide. But here you can see just that January to June period. Again, the orange is the January of 22, and the red would be January of 2023. So you can see that overall, those numbers are down. Over the period. Next slide, please. This slide and this chart depicts the total number of packs sold by jurisdiction. If you start at 12 o'clock and go around clockwise, you can see Albemarle and Augusta and all around. They're in the same order as they're listed on the side. By far, Albemarle, by virtue of its population and number of retail outlets, usually is number 2 in packs sold. But Augusta is the top seller. They also have a larger number of retail establishments, and usually they're selling in those packs in the jurisdictions, in the jurisdictions and really in any given month. Again, anecdotally, if you have a Wawa or a Sheetz, you're doing pretty well. And we could even see that in Greene County during the period of time that the Sheetz was given to them. Next slide, please. So moving out on to the allocation, and this would be the net to the localities. Again, comparing January of 2022 through June 2022, and the same 6 months in 23. Again, you see there are some months where it's a little higher in 23. Again, overall, the trend has been following fewer packs. It's going to be fewer dollars collected and distributed to February seemed to be a down month. I don't remember anything going on in particular in February. Cold out.
New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I can maybe it took a month for it to show up because January was pretty strong. So, but then people got back to their own March. Yeah. And then the next slide will show you the allocations by jurisdiction. Again, in the same order, Albemarle County, the biggest chunk of the total amount collected. You'll notice Augusta is less. That is because they have just a 15 cents per pack tax rate, whereas all of the other counties have a 40-cent rate. City of Charlottesville previously had taxes at 55 cents per pack. So,
Can I ask you something on that same, explaining it, but have we ever put a chart in of the jurisdictions that are in or of what their local tax on cigarettes is?
I don't know that we've included that chart in. Everybody, I can just tell you, all the jurisdictions are at 40 cents per pack, with the exception of Charlottesville, which is 55, and Augusta, which is at 15.
Greene has 40 cents a pack.
Greene is 40. So we have in TJPDC, you have Albemarle, Greene, and Fluvanna at 40 cents, and Charlottesville at 55. And the other 4 jurisdictions are outside of our footprint.
they are in our cigarette.
They're in the cigarette tax board,
Yeah,
but they're outside of the TJPD.
I understand that, but I was kind of curious about what their locality tax rates are, cigarette tax rates. It's small. I tried to scratch around and find this out myself, and I wasn't able to. Greene doesn't even post theirs on the Greene County website. So, anyway,
They are posted, the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board does have a page on the TJPDC website, I'll post it there.
it's on the TJPDC website, if you know where to look for it. Is that what you just told me?
If you go to the TJPDC homepage and under the, scroll back halfway down, there's different areas of programs and services.
Yeah,
It's listed there very prominently. On the
yeah,
page.
and it covers all the different, not just our region, not just TJPDC jurisdiction, but all the other.
It's,
Yeah.
it's the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax
Yeah.
Board landing
Okay,
page.
thank you.
Yes.
That way, if I want to look at it.
Yeah.
Go find it.
That's the place to go.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So just a couple of things I wanted to bring you up to date with regards to the board. I think since we presented to you last time, the board has met twice in April and July. They approved a budget that was then recommended to the commission and included the commission's budget for fiscal year 24, about $2.5 million. You may recall that when we talked about the board 6 months ago, I think there was some discussion among members of the commission about the reserve fund. So when the board was established or was getting up and running, we asked for some upfront funding from each of the participating jurisdictions, one of which was a reserve of $140,000 cumulatively. As we moved through the initial months of the board, it became clear that we were not going to need that reserve, or at least that large reserve, anytime in the future. And I think some of you all must recognize that and asked what's going to happen. So we took that back to the cigarette tax board, and they subsequently have agreed to set a reserve amount at $40,000. And I believe here soon, we are going to be making the distribution back to local jurisdictions of the approximately 100 and some thousand, as soon as we get that final number. And it will be distributed back based on the tax sold ratio at the start of the board. After that is done, we will then distribute any excess reserve amount to the jurisdictions based on the tax sold ratio for that particular month. So if we do that in September, I guess by the time we do October's reports, it may be that you would see your staff see that there's going to be a separate payment coming in from the cigarette tax board for that reserve amount. We'll certainly, have a memo explaining the rationale and everything to back that up. Any questions about that?
Is that where we pick the vehicle out? Start off with a reserve, it's not in the admin cost.
We had
It was in
the
the startup.
startup costs. Yeah, the startup costs were like $200 some thousand, including the $140,000 reserve. There was an allowance, $30,000 to $35,000 for the vehicle.
In addition to
In addition, yeah, technology. Yeah.
I would just say down the road, whatever your life cycle is for the vehicle, the reserve would be a proper place to try to figure out a future cost. Which would need it every year.
That was our good.
And then finally, I'm sorry, we get back to policy on erroneous collections. This is policy that covers when distributor submits payment for a retailer that's he says is in one county, but it's actually located in another jurisdiction. So we gotta make the numbers work and rectify that. Again, Gretchen does a great job of doing that. And then the board has also approved for the tax board funds to be invested with the Virginia investment pool, because interest rates on the rise. There stands to be an opportunity to earn some interest on that. All right, final slide, I believe, is coming up for next time. Just a couple of things on compliance. Again, we started with Otis, who I think you met right after we started about a year ago, going out, meeting with all the retailers, educating them, informing them about, the tax rates and the ordinances in their jurisdictions, and working with them to get them to be compliant with the ordinances. So far, Louisa has visited over 220 retailers over the past year. We think we got about 30 or 40 more to go. Most of them are in compliance, or have been found to be in compliance, or have been good to work towards compliance. We tried to help them out a little bit back in June with a memo that went out, just with some friendly reminders, as we called it, about various compliance provisions that they needed to adhere to, various reporting requirements that they needed to adhere to. It's been well over a year. It's probably a good time for them to hear a reminder from us. Also give credit to Ruth. She set up a web-based locator that is also on the website, where distributor or anybody can go on, they can punch in an address, and they can take you right to the exact location and be able to see which jurisdiction that address is physically located there. And that's been where we've had some of the problems, particularly, and I know this happens in other areas of taxation where you have a Charlottesville address that's located physically in Albemarle County. So we're hoping that over time that will become an even more useful tool for distributors to help figure things out themselves in terms of where new clients that they don't have are located, so that they can submit the tax correctly. Next slide, please. All right, and then just coming up, and I know I've gone on way too long. Board meeting in October, I'm going to have some additional compliance process and procedures before them. Again, this memo that we put out in June stated that we expected all retailers to be in full compliance by the end of 2023. And, the overwhelming majority of them way. We're going to move, I think, in 2024 calendar year from a registration to a more of a permit and licensure process, where we would actually approve the application or the registration and issue them a permit number. We have not done that here before, but I think that will give us a little bit more teeth, maybe, or stronger case to be able to take any action that may be necessary if you have a distributor who is not going to be in compliance. Then some action can be taken in regard to their license to be able to do this specific region. And then at some point, hopefully this fall, for their 4 regional boards in Virginia, 3 of which have gotten up and running in the past 2 years, hoping that we're going to get those boards together and just kind of break some bread and share with our colleagues, what works, what doesn't work, how can we improve. And, we should have probably been doing that before now. I think that would be a good meeting. So I think that was all that I had. So again, sorry for going on and on, but try to take any questions.
Just got one, so you don't know. What are we using the money for?
You can have to ask Charlottesville and Albemarle and Louisa or Greene and Fluvanna. They're using general fund.
Yeah. Ours was, I think we had some set aside for things that were focused on health initiatives and education.
And I will believe we're also Eastern, but I'm not sure. David, when the partnership began, Nelson County supervisors voted to not become part of it. Would there be an opportunity in the future to perhaps consider that again?
There is an opportunity for provisions in the bylaws that allow additional jurisdictions to become members of the board. You just have to, certainly can let you know, you just have to petition the board, and then you have to vote to approve you coming in. And then there's a process in place for then having skin in the game, just as all the original members did. So there will be an additional contribution that would be expected as well.
Because this year's budget season is almost over. We're already thinking about it. Sure. Ready this next year. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, David. All right, the next item 3C is the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative update. Body, as we like to call it.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair Galloway. My name is Florian. I am the body project assistant, and I'm working closely with the body program director, Lori Alshaus. Tonight, I will give you a brief overview of the project, some highlights that happened in the past few months, and one of the most important things of the projects, the field visits that we conduct each month. Next slide, please. The VADI 2022 grant supports our partner Firefly and the regional internet service expansion called RISE. This is a 3-year project with the purpose of working together to provide high-speed fiber optic broadband to rural areas in these 13 counties. Next slide, please. Looking at the project by the numbers, this is a $288 million project. 79 million come from the state through the Department of Housing and Community Development. 209 million come from the 13 counties as local match and 4 utility partners as private match. The goal of the project is to provide 36,000 businesses and residential homes with access to high-speed broadband within 3 years. Now, these 36,000 businesses and residential homes is also classified as passings in one of the project's milestones. And next slide, please. Right now, we'll show some highlights of the project that happened in the past few months. We can go back to this. So on August 31st, we had our 5th quarterly stakeholders meeting. We heard some valuable construction updates from Firefly and the utility partners for work that they are currently doing in certain areas and for completed work. Next slide, please. A little bit about the financial management piece. So we have reviewed, verified, and submitted the 6 remittance requests to DHCD and several of the counties. We're continuing to receive and processing a set of reimbursement requests to Firefly. And with that being said, as of August 28, almost $14 million have been processed through TJPDC's book. $10.5 million from the Department of Housing and Community Development, $3 million from the counties, and $311,000 for administrating the grant. This is the project's progress that we submitted in August of this year, but it contains July data. So these are all the milestones that we have to complete by the end of this project. I'm not going to recite these numbers, but I would ask you to pay special attention to the names of the milestones because I would like to explain those in some of the upcoming slides of the presentation. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the most fun parts of the projects. We conduct site visits each month. Next slide, please. Starting with Greene County. On March 24th, we attended a site visit in Greene County on Hideaway Trail. It is a very rural, remote area in Greene County, and we observed some underground fiber installation. As you can see from the first and second picture, those holes were dug by hand by workers in the area, and there was probably around 15 holes like that. The reason behind that was they had a hard time getting the equipment that they need because of the incline of the road was so steep. Next slide, please. The next site visit was conducted at the border between Nelson and Amherst County on April 25th. We observed some fiber splicing operation. It's a very delicate and very time-consuming process, but the end result is very rewarding because this operation will provide fiber internet to Amherst and Nelson County. Now, in May, we conducted 2 site visits. The first site visit was conducted on May 18th. We had the opportunity to attend Firefly's presentation at their headquarters. The presentation was done by their construction management partner, and they specifically talked about field data collection and fiber design, which is the primary two factors of the project before the construction work begins. After that, we had the opportunity to tour their supply area, and we learned more about processes that Firefly takes to manage their supply chain. Next slide, please. On May 31st, we joined DHCD on their biennial visit in Louisa County. We observed aerial fiber installation, a splicing operation, and we also saw one of the communications hut. We said, now, if you paid attention to the milestone, it said one communication hut said, the picture in this slide is referencing to that hut in the Mount Hope area of Louisa County. Next slide, please. In Fluvanna County, June 23rd, very rainy day, but we had the opportunity to observe completed work. Now, these pedestals that you see, they're all for underground fiber. What happens there is they're housing the service drops that go from the box to each house in the area. So one big strain of fiber is gonna be placed at the box, but then it will split into multiple connections to the houses, so residents can get access to it. Next slide, please. Greene County, July 5th, we had the opportunity to observe drop of a communication hut on a concrete pad, and that was done at the Central Virginia Electric Cooperative Standardsville substation. Next slide, please. This is the last site visit that we conducted last month, August 20th. From the first picture, you can see that what that means is Firefly is doing 2 crossings across Route 29. So it takes a lot of effort to do these crossings, and they probably had around 20 flaggers that day to block all the access of the roads, and everything was done by VDOT standards and with the help of law enforcement officers. Next slide, please. Now, for construction updates or any updates that Firefly provides, you can always visit their website. It's fireflyva.com/rise, and you have to click the view all partners. When you click that, all the counties and all the utility partners are going to show up for you, and you can click on the county seal to access information for your county. Before I conclude my presentation today, I would ask if there's any questions.
Yeah, I have one question. This relates to the conversation David probably and to as well. The situation with rights being the areas that was covered. It seems like we're making some progress there.
Yeah, I shared with several folks today. We just received first progress reports from the rights team a month ago, and then subsequently made a request to gates to be asked and increase additional information because they were reporting in progress. They were also not showing any percentage completion towards milestones that they agreed to the gates meeting. So the word back from gates meeting just yesterday was a great maybe request advice for you to include that information in the next reports and moving forward.
If price speed fails to meet those milestones for progress, the question has been asked of me, how quickly can see that Firefly they'll receive additional funding? So it's one of those things that's happened in counties, the area that's been covered, maybe not price speed or see that. So if price speed fails with those milestones, the HCD has to decide to give additional funding to see that Firefly. What is the estimated time frame for Firefly return? We're certainly 2025, right?
It's really difficult to say. Lord, remind me the MOU, they're supposed to have their everything completed by the end of 24.
I believe so, December 25.
Yeah, the way the MOU is crafted, it's there's a lot of discretion to be certain actions along the way. I would really be hesitant to make a guess on how quickly should they decide to pull the plug if they could then turn it around. And send it in.
Well, I guess the question is, if the price be, I'll just say, price be, price they don't fulfill their obligations. And our residents do not have internet access. They go out to the end of the contract, the value grant goes until 2025. Is there a possibility that that money would give back to power plant? If power plant cannot fill out this for 2025 because of price being delayed in the process, we're next at that point. So that's,
I think that would probably have to be subject to another agreement and timeframe established between PUC and
we
firefighters.
would lose the funding.
If they decide to
That's-
redirect the funding and they send it to Firefly, then, I mean, I think their goal is to see, universal coverage. So I think if there's a way to get there, they're gonna do what they can to shift the money to responsible entity and give them time to complete the project.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, item 4, the consent agenda, 2 sets of minutes of June 2023. Any changes, edits, corrections to that set? Any changes, corrections, or edits to the June 22nd special meeting set of minutes? All right, if somebody could please give a motion to approve those 2 sets of minutes. So moved. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carries, thank you. And 4C, the executive director annual contract. Do we need to make any comments or commentary on that?
It's for what you all decided at the end of last fiscal year, just update the contract and bring it back to you.
Very good. Any questions from the board? All right, there's our motion to approve the executive director annual contract September 23 through 20. So
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that is approved. Thank you. We'll go to number 5, new business, 5A, May, June, and July financial reports. And my name is Laura. Or
I'll do it this time. Yeah, and then possibly we're talking about Laura either coming quarterly or biannually, but not necessarily needing to be at every meeting. I'll do intermittent updates. So May and June, was that? Or if you'd like to, it's always welcome to do the monthly. We will go through it. So I can start with, we ended the previous fiscal year in June in a very strong financial position. Our end of fiscal year net gain was 129,600. So our goal is to be 50,000 or above. So we exceeded our goal for that. May had a net gain of 17,601. We had an expected net loss. We almost always have a negative in June because of staff taking holidays. We do our end of year bonuses, and we did very extensive deep dive cleanup of all previous financials. So looking at legacy receivables, things that have been on the books for a very long time. All of that was cleaned. I think all of that is done. Maybe 1 or 2 more little things to do. But we're in a really good position there. July, we had one of our strongest months to date with a net gain of 30,661. As a reminder, this fiscal year, our indirect cost rate is significantly higher. If you can recall, it's on a 2-year lag. So our 2022 financials sets our 2024 indirect cost rate. And so we're receiving much more in indirect costs than we're used to, which is why we might see higher net gains than we're used to. I can't promise that across the whole year, but that's at least where we are now. In the packet are the 3 months profit and loss statements, as well as the balance sheets, comparative year-over-year balance sheets. We also have updated and started the new accrued revenue report that reports on every grant program's spend down across time so that we can ensure that we have ample resources to pay our operating expenses through the end of the year, and we're in a really good position to be able to do that coming into this next fiscal year. And then the financial dashboard is in there as well with updated graphs for the last 3 months. happy to take any questions. that you guys have.
I have two little piddly things. Sure. One little piddly thing is the very nice approved revenue report. Showing what is going to happen in 2024. And the header says remaining fiscal year 2023.
Okay,
I think. it was-
yeah, probably just didn't catch that. Thank you.
And then,
Oh,
it's very informative and well, laid out. So I other had one other question, which I think you had explained previously, but the results for last fiscal year are a lot less than the budget because the federal funding source amount was way less. What was it that didn't happen that we thought what would happen when we did that budget?
Then that's the body pass through. Okay, since it's across that 3-year timeline, they do their best projections of how much pass through will come through, and then we have to adjust that as we go.
I
Last
really
note,
very 23 once, but I just didn't think there was it.
and you'll see in the FY25 budget where that shows up,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
Other questions?
I'm remembering a conversation some time ago about purchasing a building. Are my dim recollections accurate? Does that sound right?
That is something that is always in the back of our minds. This building recently had a change of owner. And so that was preceding that in the instance that the new owner decided not to keep us as tenants. We did sign a 5-year lease. We're 2 years into that 5-year lease. But in the next year or so, we will be back in conversations with the owner to see if they intend to renew the lease, and if not, to begin the plans to look for a new space. They have not indicated one way or another what they plan to do. Good memory.
So that'll take us to part B, bike route 76.
We did what we on 5A.
Those two, the action there. So. You accept, is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
And I've heard the motion, we have a second. Second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Now, bike route 76.
I'm gonna do my best with this one. Sandy provided a memo that is in your packet, as well as a map and a draft resolution. In 2015, the PDC did a study of the entirety of bike route 76 and made some recommendations. In 2021, the TJPDC commission approved a resolution to support a rerouting of a portion of it within Fluvanna County into the area of Palmyra for some safety improvements for that stretch. There was, since staff transition at VDOT, that project didn't move forward. They now have someone else on that project who is recommending some enhanced safety considerations that are detailed within the memo to give ample room for the bikes. In some places, there were guardrails and not enough, area for it to be safe. And so I know that the town is also doing some improvements related to streetscaping and having a bike pull-off area with tools and picnic benches and all that kind of stuff. And so it's coming back to you. David Cook at VDOT reached out to ask if we could vote in the resolution section to approve a resolution supporting some of those minor changes.
Questions here?
At the end, I put that one with the resolutions.
Some actions are here, some actions are later.
No, we can talk about that at the end and from the executive director.
Asterisks, I've got resolutions with asterisks.
I have to pause for putting all the resolutions at the end, and want to ask you guys if I can move the resolutions for when the items are
That would
discussed.
make more sense.
And not have a resolution section.
Yes.
Done. It makes my life easier for sure.
Consent agenda? I love that.
Say that again?
Consent agenda?
Yeah, we have a consent agenda. Usually I won't put things on the consent agenda that we haven't discussed at some point. And so all of these items that are in new business require us to have some level of discussion.
Item 5C, Southeast Crescent Regional Commission participation.
Okay. Also in your packet was an introduction letter, as well as some overview materials. The southeast crescent, some of you might be familiar with the Appalachian Regional Commission. The Southeastern Regional Commission was established in 2008 under the Farm Bill. Lay dormant for some time. They did not have a federal co-chair. As of December of 2021, there's now a federal co-chair. There's been appropriation of $2 million made, and they're moving forward with getting this to be an active commission. The TJPDC is eligible as a local development district, is what they call it. There are, I believe, 52 development districts within the state, and so we've been invited to apply for the funding to administer this. It is a non-competitive grant. It's a cooperation agreement. If we agree to do what it is that we're charged with, they have a formula for the funding. And so I'll give you just a little bit of detail on that. The intention of the SDRC is really to work on economic development primarily, but through a lot of different angles, whether that be affordable housing, workforce development. This amount of money, if you were to apply for it, it's not a large amount because we are not a highly distressed area. And so if you look at all of the other states, it's a 7-state region. Comparatively, our region is not as distressed as many of the other places. And so our funding right now would be limited to approximately 23,000. And what they're asking us to do with that 23,000 is to build the PDC's capacity to be able to support local governments with economic development. And so that means professional development, that means trainings and travel. It's helping the staff here at the PDC learn how to better support local governments with their initiatives. And so the application is due tomorrow for that. We intend to apply part of it for professional development, part of it for staff time, and that's so that we can engage in things like BEDP, BEDA, the chambers of commerce. So for our staff to build an economic development arm, because really our only foray into economic development has been the comprehensive economic development strategy, the SEDS plan. And so I think it's a really great opportunity. I will say they are building this as they get it rolling. And so a lot of the questions that we have, they're saying this first year is a learning opportunity. We're all going to go into it together to learn and then assess it after the first year and see what kind of improvements can be made. It does identify all 6 of our jurisdictions. They have 3 different categories of either distressed, transitioning, or attainment. We have in our PDC, Louisa and Nelson are considered transitioning. All of the others are attainment. There is 1 census block in Charlottesville that is considered distressed. And the reason for that naming is so that it then grant programs that they put forth, depending on the level of distress, is the level of match. So very distressed areas are required to have much lower matches when they apply for implementation funding versus non-distressed areas would have to put more local funds into grants. Part of this funding is to help us better learn the different grant programs that are available so that we can help educate our local governments on grant programs that our region historically does not take advantage of. One of them, particularly through the SDRC, is called, I don't know what it stands for, but SEID. That is SDRC's implementation grant. And so this will help us learn more about it, eligible uses for it, and then help pass that along to you all as we learn more.
State economic and infrastructure development.
Thank you. Should have written it down, but I just appreciate it. So happy to take any questions. If I don't know the answers, I will go get them for you, but this has been a very quick moving process. They gave us an alert that we would be doing a webinar on Monday. I think they wanted a notice of intent to apply by Friday, and then application due 2 weeks later. So we were lucky to get it before applying. Some PDCs probably don't get it before they're forward.
Any questions? Not particularly important, but do you happen to know which census tract in Charlottesville they define as distressed?
I'm not going to pull it from memory right now, but yes, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, not that, just curious.
No, I actually just looked at it a couple days ago, but I'm not going to.
6.
6.
That's correct. 6.
Thank you. I almost said 7.
is on their website, is there somewhere here that kind of outlines what the difference between distress and traditional limitation?
I had that question. She was wanting to postpone the issue.
Well, I mean, it's right, 100%. It's good that you guys-
I don't know, I haven't had the time to.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been spending the last, few days.
economic designation. There it is.
Yeah, there's some formulas, something that I believe that initially they were relying on some of the calculations, analysis, such as the ARC. They're trying to mirror some of that, making this determination. That's a lot of be dangerous.
So there's short description, it says distressed counties, those counties that are the most severely and persistently economically distressed, underdeveloped, they also have high rates of poverty and unemployment or out migration. Transitional counties, those counties that are economically distressed and underdeveloped or have recently suffered high rates of poverty, unemployment or out migration. Attainment counties just says those counties in the region that are not designated as distressed or transitional. And then isolated areas of distress, those areas located in counties designated as attainment counties that have high rates of poverty and unemployment. Then there's a whole, well, there's not a whole, there's always one figure. Interesting.
Down in the resolutions section, there'll be a resolution authorizing us to apply and then administer. It is on a federal fiscal year, so October 1 to September 30.
Right. People are actually pretty good on the website. I should get the guy to check it. Any other questions or comments here? We go later. B, 5D, body 2024 unsolicited proposal. David?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you may recall, April of last year, the commission approved some public-private education infrastructure act guidelines. They're authorized by the Code of Virginia, to, I guess, position the TJPDC in situations where it may be advantageous or efficient to have a public-private partnership to carry out a project. After adopting those guidelines, since that time, we've received 2 unsolicited proposals, and the guidelines allow for the unsolicited as well as solicited proposals. But I've received 2 unsolicited proposals from Firefly to carry out broadband expansion on the greater beyond TJPDC region. Firefly has submitted another unsolicited proposal as we look at the process for applying for body 24 grants. The guidelines are out, there's a timeline in place, and they are looking to build off of the project that TJPDC is currently working on with them to fill in really well some of the unserved areas and some of the difficulties in coverage. Greene County, Madison County, and Cumberland County in particular have some areas that they don't see be part of the project. They're looking into some further areas, Louisa County being one, but also Houston and Powhatan, that we also be part ultimately part of the process for additional funding. So what's included in your packet was the unsolicited proposal from Firefly. Staff has looked at that, determined that it meets the guideline in which it would be submitted as an unsolicited proposal. And so that's brought to you tonight to consider through a resolution, I guess, later on. And should you choose to adopt a resolution, then that would signal that you are accepting their unsolicited proposal for public notice and for consideration. That would then trigger, and this is the process that we followed the last few times, that would trigger a process of posting the proposal for a period of 15 days. There would be an opportunity then for other competing ISPs to also submit a proposal. At the end of that public comment or that 15-day period, to allow their solicitations to come in. You know, if any came in, we analyze those. At your October meeting, which is the guideline, we hold a public hearing. And then we take an action to accept a unsolicited proposal. You know, for firefighting the proposals. That would, doing that would enable TJPDC to be the lead applicant for a bond 24 grant for additional program funding. So the application period opens this month. There's an October, middle of October, I believe, date by which we would have to provide a notice of intent to apply to the CD, and then the application deadline is in December. So I think we're in pretty good timelines for this process that we control. You know, when it's what else going on? But the fire proposal, again, similar to what format to what we've seen before, and then there is a map in the back that lays out those three areas and I mentioned the rest to Louisa and the other two counties, which maybe some additional work. I mean, I'm not sure, you know, the project by 22, there was a ton of ARPA money. You know, there is some ARPA money left at the state level available for appropriation, but at this point, I'm anticipating that 24 would be that $50 million in state general funds.
Questions? Great. All right, we go to 5E, that's the draft fiscal year 24-28 agency strategic plan presentation.
So just a quick review, the next slide of the process that we went through. In May, we kicked off this process, reaffirming the mission and the vision. We then had, just get right ahead, so we're ready for all this part. We then had a work session with you all as a board in June. We had a staff retreat in July. And then bringing the draft to you today. It's included in your packet, as well as I'll go through a brief presentation on what's in the draft. And then we will share this with other stakeholders, mayors and chairs, other partners, and then bring it back to you all in October for you all to vote on. If you have not had an opportunity, because I know this month's packet was very, very long. If you have not had a chance to look through that strategic plan, I welcome you to do it at a different time and give me feedback later if there are things that you want me to consider for incorporating revisions for bringing back in October. I recognize that it's a lot to get through. So within the strategic plan, the table of contents shows everything that was included in there. Next. Within the I'm going to go through each section very briefly. Within the executive director's message, the first thing we're stating is that we are attempting to exemplify the core values that have been recommended. One of the major parts of the staff retreat was looking at the existing core values that have existed previously, and then doing a really deep dive into how has the PDC changed, what are things that are relevant now, what is it that we actually want to make sure that we are all of our actions are meeting those core values. And so you'll see some recommended changes to those core values from previous years. It also, the executive director's message has a reflection of some of the successes of the last 3 years that the PDC has had, as well as new accomplishments for the PDC, first time things that have been done that have not previously been done. And then also a looking forward within that message. Then there's a background section within the strategic plan, and that's where I pulled out all of the background on planning district commissions, how they were established, when the TJPDC itself was established, that the charge of PDCs are to create a strategic plan in cooperation with their local governments, and it identifies the TJPDC commission membership as well as a map of the member jurisdictions. There's then an introduction to the strategic plan of the purpose and how it was developed, going through the timeline and the process. As you guys previously reaffirmed, the mission did not change, except for one hyphen included in a word, but the mission remains as it was previously. The vision as well remains as you guys previously reaffirmed. This is the core values. I'll share with you what the previous core values were, and you'll see an awful lot of overlap, if not the words being used within the definitions if new words were identified. So previously they were professionalism, integrity, mutual respect, accountability, and transparency. And through a series of activities that we did as a staff, we're recommending that the core values be slightly adjusted to be professionalism, accountability, collaboration, adaptability, and equity. And adaptability particularly came about as we have been through the pandemic and all of the federal funding that has come about, and how local government's priorities change, and making sure that as a PDC we're able to adapt to the priorities within our local governments and not necessarily be bound by something printed into our strategic plan, but to be nimble and change with the region. And then we also included the recommended core value of equity, and making sure that we are clearly stating that we respect the different values and needs of all 6 of our local governments, and putting in equitable attention to both urban and rural, as well as local and regional initiatives, and then also providing fair treatment, access, and opportunity for member governments, but also our stakeholders in our community, and adopting that as one of our values. The outreach process is detailed within the strategic plan, but basically it sets out that our member governments identify their priority issues, define actions, and make recommendations for TJPD staff and how to support them. Our TJPDC staff then receives that input, drafts recommendations, programs, projects, and services to address those needs, and implements plans. And the role of the commissioners is to define the priority policy or program areas, to approve the strategic plan, and to allocate the resources to do the work. As you all are familiar with, as I shared in June, the outreach process included survey distribution, survey respondents, description, content, and the board work session. So this section of the strategic plan details the process that we went through to receive input. As you all defined in the June meeting, the 6 core program areas continue to be transportation and transit, housing, legislative services, environmental planning, broadband, and regional local planning. I put the page numbers 12 through 15. Each of these program areas are then detailed, all of the different projects and initiatives that we have within each of these program areas in the strategic plan. And then the next section is new. This was not in previous versions of the strategic plan that I could find, but identifying some of the priority actions that the staff intends to undertake within the next 5 years. And so certainly our primary focus is to serve as a key convener on critical regional topics. That has been throughout all strategic plans that I reviewed. The second one is to build and maintain relationships with our local, state, and federal agency staff and funders, regularly attending board and council meetings, regularly attending check-ins with staff leadership that we initiated within the last year or so, and then regularly attending scheduled check-ins with all of our state and federal funded programs, and continuing to build relationships with our state and federal agencies. Third priority action is to enhance our communication with our member jurisdictions. That's something that you all previously noted in the work sessions, making sure that we are clearly communicating back to our member governments the work that we're doing. We do issue the monthly newsletter, providing written quarterly reports on all of our programs and projects, and then also issuing the written director's report in the monthly commission packet. Fourth priority action would be to conduct a policy audit review several times in the last maybe 2 years. We've relied on a policy that maybe hasn't been updated since 2018 or 2012, and I think it's time for us to do an inventory of all of them, put eyes on all of them, get them re-adopted and updated at the commission level. So we'll be doing that audit within the next 2 years. And then also updating our employee handbook. There are some sections of our handbook where state code has changed that we need to amend, and then also some practices we have that have not been codified as policy in the handbook that we'd like to include. And then fifth priority action would be to improve the adoption of best practices, policies, and procedures to ensure efficient and effective operations, particularly in the areas of financial management and human resources. And so with the hiring of our wonderful Laura Greene in the back, it has been really lovely to go through and modernize the systems that we're using and make sure that we are using best practices in all areas, and to not only better administer our human resources, but to better equip our staff with access to their own benefits. So enhancing communication on all of that. And then last two priority actions, number 6 is to maintain a vibrant company culture. Is to make sure we're working internally on the company culture here, developing a staff retention strategy to make sure that we are doing the best we can to retain staff that we already have, but also attract new staff when that opportunity comes up. Regularly planning and conducting team building and staff retreats and staff meetings. And then also in this area, providing opportunities for staff professional development to make sure in as many ways possible we are budgeting for and encouraging staff to take advantage of opportunities to not only further their own resumes, but as it relates to the work, enhance the work of the PDC by taking advantage of those opportunities. And then the final one is solidify office plans prior to September 2025 lease. And there'll be more to come on that one thing more. Added a section in the strategic plan just with acknowledgements of the existing TJPDC commissioners as well as existing staff, so that that's documented in each strategic plan. And then there is a conclusion, and the appendix has copies of all of the questions that were in the survey, as well as the results of the survey, so that stays with the strategic plan. Happy to take any feedback, suggestions. Like I said, I don't expect all of it to come now. If you want to take time, I'm also happy to take it now if you have any. But this will come back to you in its final form in October for your consideration for adoption as our next 5-year strategic plan.
Questions? And you said, as review, if there are questions, comments, we'll just email you direct.
Yes, please.
Okay. Nothing to take action. Next one. All right, we'll move to 5F, draft fiscal year 25 projected operating.
Okay, so as you all recall, we have a 3-step budgeting process. In September, October, we do a projected operating budget that sets the per capita rate, and it sets the local contribution requests that we're going to make to our local governments, so that we can begin the application process to our 6-member jurisdictions and have it in place for their budget. It'll then come back before you all in April and May with any revisions of things that have changed between now and then, new grants we've secured, contracts we've signed, so any amendments. And then again, at the end of a fiscal year, we amend the budget to closer project, and the final amended budget is the one that's used for auditing purposes. The balanced budget presented to you tonight is $52,953,771 in both revenues and expenses. That is 51 million of that nearly is pass-through funding for our body programs, home art, other grants and contracts. And then about 46 million of that 51 is specific to the body project. So you can see the scale of that one. The operating budget is at 1,895,806. It does have a 66 cents per capita rate that was approved by the commission in September of 2022. We'll go to the next one. The next page in the budget is our anticipated revenues. I highlight ones that we either have not secured a contract, but are highly probable. You'll see to include the SDRC is on there. If the SDRC become something that we do annually, that budget amount would increase. In 2025, right now, I only have the tail end of the federal fiscal year, so that would only be the July to September amount. And then the very last spreadsheet, which we're not gonna put up on the screen just because it is so tiny, you won't be able to see it, but that sets all of the local requests that we're gonna make by program and then per capita. So I encourage you to look at that and how it relates to your jurisdiction. Again, this is just in draft form for this meeting. It'll come back to you guys in your October meeting for consideration for adopting the 2025 budget.
The contribution to the regional housing partnership is we're going to stay the same and so.
Yes. The hope is that through the process that we're doing, some look at contributions to the regional housing partnership, that we can get other partners to be contributing outside our.
Not just the. Yeah. I see you have a question. Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get to the resolutions. Talking about. All right, so the first resolution is adopting the 2022 home CDBG taker. Presented earlier.
Would it be helpful if I read the recommended motion and someone can just say so? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, if you've got specific.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, wait, yes.
First one, staff recommends motion to approve the resolution to adopt 2022 home CDBG consolidated annual performance evaluation report, so known as the paper.
Can you look through on the screen there while you
Please.
Sure. Here's a second.
Who was the first one there? Who's second?
And I'm sorry, Mr. Was that Ryan? I heard it to the right, but I didn't know. Who this is, I know. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Approved. And the next one is a resolution of support to reroute US Bike Route 76 from US 15 and the historic Albemarle. So moved. Second. Which was been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Next resolution is to approve authorization to apply and administer the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission Local Development District Capacity Building Grant. So all right, I heard Supervisor Reed, Supervisor Andrews, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That is approved. And then the final resolution B is to a resolution to accept resolution accepting an unsolicited proposal for extending broadband access in several counties. So moved. Second. All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That resolution. Thank you. Number 7, Executive Director's Report.
The first administrative item on the executive director's report is if you have not already subscribed, we do put out a monthly e-newsletter that we encourage you guys to join. There's a link, a live link within the version that I sent you. We highlight both our staff and our programs and relevant items. We have now circulated through all of our staff, and I'm recommending to you all to gauge your interest or your willingness if we could highlight a commissioner each month for the 12 months so that we can begin to introduce you all also through our newsletter. Just want to hear from you all if that's something that you'd be willing or interested in allowing us to put into our newsletter.
I got no problem.
Anyone else have any?
Are you gonna interview us or is it gonna be like, what's on your reading list?
We'll likely send you a series of brief questions. You can either answer them or you can provide your own narrative if there are questions that you're interested in answering.
Any objection? Give the side eye. If you get-
You can always use chat.
Great, thank you. There's a detailed update on body in there that we provide every month. I won't go through those since presented to you all. There's also details on home and home art funding and how since the last time that we met in June, how some of those funds have been committed. Particularly of interest within Louisa Housing Foundation is going to construct up to 25 rental units using both home and home art funding. And then also Skyline Tap in Greene County purchased 2 different units with home funds in order to provide additional affordable rental housing within Greene County. Some transportation updates, the Safe Streets and Roads for All, the U.S. Department of Transportation grant that we received. We are now under contract with USDOT. We also have signed our agreement with Virginia Department of Transportation to do the crash safety analysis. And then we are a day away from being under contract with our selected consultant, Finland Thorne. That was tied up in the legal review, but we now have all terms and conditions ready to go. So we anticipate issuing a notice to proceed for that early next week, if not by the end of tomorrow. For smart scale, our staff has been paying very close attention to the discussions that the Commonwealth Transportation Board has been having. They are undergoing a pretty deep dive review of the smart scale program. They do it every couple of years to see if it's having the intended outcomes and impacts. There are many things that are codified, and there are many things that are at the CTB's discretion that relate to smart scale. The Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, there's another good acronym, OIB has done an assessment and is making recommendations to the CTB on potential changes to the smart scale for this next upcoming round of applications that will be submitted in 2024. We have been in very close contact with staff in each of your jurisdictions, and we stand ready to present to any of your elected bodies if you so choose. We were just recently at Albemarle's request at their board discussing those and what some potential impacts might be for our region. As an example, one impact is they're thinking of capping the number of applications that jurisdictions can submit. Right now it's 4. They're thinking of capping that at 2. And so each jurisdiction, the TJPDC and the NPO would only get to submit 2 applications. So there are several things like that that would have a pretty large impact. If you want any more information on that, or if any of your staff want more information on that, Sandy Shackelford is our group and would be happy to schedule some time to go through it. Charlottesville Albemarle Planning, Metropolitan Planning Organization, the NPO has been working on the long range transportation plan. And so they are currently doing an engagement with the community on that. For rural transportation, they recently had a presentation on best practices for public engagement. And then TJPDC staff is supporting several TAP, Transportation Alternative Program, several TAP applications on behalf of Nelson County. As far as transit, we were awarded the mobility management grant. I believe that had already happened in June, but I wasn't certain. So we definitely have that grant. We, through a procurement process, have selected Java to partner with. They're going to help us staff the call center, which is a perfect fit since mobility management is intended to support persons with disabilities and seniors particularly. We are working right now to design our data collection and reporting. We're building this program from the ground up, and so we want to make sure we spend enough time in the beginning administration portion, getting it set up properly so that we're not backpedaling to fix things. So it has, since it is federal funding, we can't begin until October 1 anyway. So it's been a really good opportunity for us to work closely with Java to build the program. We are also out seeking other additional funding for this program because the amount of grant funding that we got is enough to start this. It is not enough to scale up over time. So we're keeping our eyes on, community foundations and other grant opportunities to further bolster that program. Environment, the largest one that I'll share is the Rivanna River Basin Commission has its 8th annual conference on September 28th from 9 to 12:30. They are going to be, the topic is PFAS, which is very timely, and there will be presentations from RSWA, EPA, the Department of Health, and DEQ. So I encourage you guys to look. It is free, and registration is open to the public. That's all I have for my updates.
Could you just repeat what the change was in terms of the amount of applications, the counties are submitting?
Yes, right now localities are allowed to submit up to 4 applications. One of the recommendations coming out of WAPE is that it is capped at 2 instead of 4, and there's several different reasons for that. For one, the amount of funding that has gone into the grant program has significantly increased over time, and VDOT's staff capacity has not. And so the amount of staff time that it's taking to review and support each of these applications has increasingly become a problem for VDOT. A second reason is that they're receiving a lot of applications that aren't ready. And so they're trying to create a way to eliminate incomplete or not quite ready applications from going into the pipeline and having local governments, NPOs, planning district commissions be much more discerning in what they apply for. But there are also a whole swath of other changes that they're considering and recommending. Another one that's really relevant for the NPO and for the TJPDC is we are only eligible to apply under the high priority projects, which need to be regional projects on, I wish Cindy was here, corridors of statewide significance. Right now, we are able to submit smaller projects like PED projects. They are thinking of changing the types of projects that are eligible for the high priority program. So that would impact what types of projects the PDC and NPO could support. So there's a lot, and Sandy has a wonderful memo, detailed and abbreviated. She has a presentation. So if you want any further detail, she would be happy to go through this with you. It's been hours and hours of distilling information from the CTV, and they're in the middle of their process. So they're going to meet again in September and October, and staff will be paying attention to those to see, so that we can clearly communicate what the impacts would be to our region.
Minutes to the CTV work session that they did in July. You can go in and review them. The NPO has had 2 different presentations at this point, so you could always go back and watch the recording of that to see Sandy's presentation. And then that was the 3rd time I sat through it last night, and it's still significant. So, and then they'll have on September 20 is when the next work session is by the CDB. If you wanted to listen in there, that's where they'll be considering economic development. Like things are going to get weighted, scores are going to change. There's a lot coming from that. Cool. Thank you. Any other questions there? Throw that out on the NPO, so that's why I've sat through it 3 times. And it's not enough. I mean, the reason for the presentation to our board is I wanted all the members to start to understand what the changes are, so that when they do make them, because this isn't a fight thing, this is, you need to recalibrate how you apply for this stuff. And if you're not, on your game, well, it's going to be very different than it was last go.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add, in addition to the CTV, may be able to do, within our existing authority, I think it's possible that there could be legislation proposed in 2024 session. If there are things that they would like to do, maybe not that forward. So that's something that I would be doing.
Just thinking of that summary that she put together, it was distributed to our board. Might be distributed to everybody here. So It was very helpful. It's not going to be time for very long, but it's very helpful.
I can send them all of them.
So we'll go to, thank you for staying. Number 8, the next, we're up to the round table discussion by jurisdiction. Council Payne, let's start over there.
Sure. Probably our biggest news is finally Charlottesville has hired a permanent city manager, Sam Sanders, who was our deputy city manager for operations. And very excited to have him in that role. He's did an amazing job in the deputy role. And extremely excited to have him there. We've have an alternative fuel study underway for our bus system, and really the choice will come down to the timeline and scale of how we may transition our bus fleet to battery electric buses, and the timeline of that versus using compressed natural gas or diesel buses. That's kind of in the bridge to getting there or not. And zoning rewrite still underway. Closer, our planning commission likely next month or so will vote on their recommendation for updating our entire zoning code, which will then go to us, city council. I feel confident we make additional changes, and probably earliest timeline by the end of December, Charlottesville may vote on a change to our zoning code. That would be likely the earliest than that. And then today there is a big federal rage in Charlottesville. So 2 kilograms of fentanyl powder were seized along with some other things. So I know it feels like a never-ending losing battle in terms of the impact that in our regional communities, but hopefully that will have some meaningful impact on the distribution of fentanyl in our market. But that was a pretty huge, long investigation. So
2 kilograms?
About 2 kilograms of powdered fentanyl, in addition to several thousand already pressed pills. And
State of Charlottesville.
Okay. That's rather comprehensive. The Greene King report just came out, which tells us what we think the rezoning might do for us, which, as I expected, high interest rates, bad for developer, make the numbers back. Which that was my expectation, but I appreciate having a professional confirm that. Meaning that the rezoning will still be significant, but it will have the impact that we expected earlier on in the process. This change will be slower. Not shocking, but slower. That's the biggest news I've had today. Rezoning is very much my focus, as well as moving leadership transition, the city commission. Those are the big things. There's a big hubbub about Airbnb. We're not going to break Airbnb. It's not yet. Maybe later. We had we're going to ban in most of the city in the most recent draft of zoning, and that upset the people. So currently, holding tight. We're not making any changes on Airbnb right now. This is my expectation.
Supervisor Reed.
I go watch the Zoom meeting. Curious as to what was going to happen with the homestay, so. Because that's not my person, that's the kind of what we do too.
But is a bigger city.
yeah,
Pretty much. The bigger things going on in Nelson are the comprehensive plan. We had our, I guess, our final draft that the public got a chance to review, and our public works in a public presentation last week. The most interesting thing about that was that last year our board of supervisors have the resolution pursuing a technical assistance grant for UDA in Nellysport. And there was a group of folks in my district, of course, that saw that as a under the table opportunity for Nelson County to do all sorts of development in Nellysport that people don't want. Although it's just a technical grant that has planning and public input connected with it. But it was the first time that VDOT has ever gotten dozens as opposed to 0 comments on a planning grant. Something that for our counties. So we pulled our application instead of deciding to wait until after the plan is finalized. And then it might be an appropriate time to pursue something. But it's very interesting to see how polarizing social media can be when bad information gets out. It's sort of like a wildfire, and nobody really cares very much about, getting more information about it. They just want people to ask questions. It was very.
That happens in Nelson County? Yeah, that happens in Nelson County.
Yeah. Stony Creek.
I heard about that one.
So there's also a 151 corridor study, and of course a lot of people in my district as well are very concerned about traffic safety. So that will that may not be completed in time for our final weighing of the comprehensive plan, but of course it's something we've been very sort of included in the subsequent planning we want to do to try to achieve anything in the other interesting thing is that we had we're creating a master plan for a piece of property, Larkin property, which surrounds Nelson County and Nelson County Middle School, south of Livingston. There's a creek there called Villa Creek, which enables potential for expanding our service authority sewer and water capacity in Livingston Colleen area. So right now, Livingston doesn't really allow too much more development at all because of combination of the geography of Livingston being steep and floodplain, and the lack of ability for infrastructure to be there to provide there. So our service authority in the county have an RFP for engineering study on that, and thinking that may be a combination that increase to the supply that serves sewer and water to Livingston Colony. So that's going forward with the rest of the master plan. We'll probably include fields because we share by Parks and Rec schools and swimming pool and aqua recreation area. So we're looking for we only have so much debt service and we don't have those. So we're weighing the costs and the benefits of getting that done sooner.
I'm skipping around the detail.
Pass. As most of you may know, that Greene now has its own water authority. Finally, another representative service authority. It took us about 3 to 4 years to get it. Citizens received their first bill this past week, so they're not happy citizens. I don't think they understand that the initial bill was an estimate because we didn't receive good data from RSA transition. So basically it comes down to it's very difficult to have a starting point and ending point of water usage. So there's a lot of estimation going on. And so does one of us have people like that. But the good news is we're up and running. There's some bugs to work out. Now we're going to call on that date for 3 or 4 years. The reservoir project moving forward, that should have been done by now, to be honest with you. We were held up quite a bit. But we should be moving forward at a rapid rate at this point. Obviously, we're in drought right now, so break around and we'll be able to go up and absolutely. That's before we did ask ordinance to review and look at speed enforcement cameras in bus zones, school zones, excuse me. So we're looking at doing that. We also got the ordinance for signs, for example, like the fire departments, et cetera. They've been after the county for years to allow us to allow them because signs have we have ordinance against that and go through that. We have a couple of controversial topics on the agenda for Tuesday night. One is the PUD, it's the national area. I don't think people quite understand what about right development actually means. We have a choice between PUD or about right. PUD will have less impact on our current infrastructure
provide more resources for water connections, and provide more green space, but evidently the public seems to think that a bioreactor project is a better selection because it works that a bioreactor project won't get connected. Nor do they seem to understand that a bioreactor project you have to provide infrastructure, whether you actually have the infrastructure or not, that's by right, they would better provide, or they give other laws in the issue. Land came before us again, that was another interesting topic, they came before us to get the same number of units from a greater geographical area, and they had a lot of exceptions in there. Public was in opposition to that, it was deferred, there was legal action by some citizens against the county concerning the land approval. We won that, was dismissed with prejudice by the judge, which upheld the decision by the board and by the planning board. So we'll probably see that come back to us again as far as since it's court cases over, they may come back to us again in the near future and basically expand their geographic area to keep everything the same. Again, there's the anti-tourism, anti-growth with no understanding of what growth following a comprehensive plan means in our community. And social media is driving a lot of that. The campaign, there's only one campaign that has actually 2 groups. We actually have one district that has no one on the ballot or school board or board supervisor. You may have a write-in candidate in one of those positions. There's an uncontested position in the Rexon district, and the other orange, we have 2 candidates running. So people want to vent, talk, and criticize, but not participate and work to make things better. That's where we are.
I think you're going swimming.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're going swimming.
They don't go poorly, it's just that, especially you push me.
How many people total has it been? 30?
What's the
Showing up in person.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same people. Yeah, but 20, the Atlantic project, the person you forward, we had probably 80 to 100, like that show up, speak. To be honest with you, you might have 30 or 40 people showing up.
Counted 20,000.
Yeah, it's funny. But, yeah, some individuals have the impression that there's 20 representatives from the past. It's very difficult to get to that process. I'm sure each of you, everybody has a same situation. I follow the rest closely. But you kind of geographically understand the Airbnb in Charlottesville.
How big was it? PED?
Yeah, I just kind of reports now, I look at that particular area. It's in Dallas, Dallas, but it's like I think it's. I have to look at it up there.
How many proposed? How many proposed units?
It's about 100, all right, and it's about 500 immediately. But they're new, next type of housing, green space, sidewalks. They also wanted to have a resolution to work in the CTV. You have an additional exit onto 33 business. The board decided on a 3-2 vote to not approve that, which means that Main Street Charlottesville, which get back up in traffic in front of schools, get back in traffic in front of church office and Richard. So it was no safety issue. But I think the members felt like that would be a sure way to kill the PUD. Anyway, that's what we are. Okay. 2 more ones.
He said, nobody's running for your seat.
That's been 2 people. And largely the beach people want for this entire. Yeah, you can already. That's the local districts. It seems like we're having people who were uncontested are not winning at all. So it seems like that's a trend. I'm sure it's in rural counties. I know that the county. There's about 50 seats. I think school board you have to. The last election, people do not run and writing the house. People listen, and I think social media is of course. But it's not like that. Well, it is.
I'll pick it up. some people think it's interesting to follow up, just, we have, 3 of the seats coming in November, and the 2 incumbents have opponents. But one person who is stepping away and not going to rerun has no, the new person has no opponent. So the open seat has no opponent, but the incumbents. So anyway, we'll see how that plays out. We also did, we did close speed cameras, starting on the Albemarle High School, so be careful. We're gonna have to close the cameras there and, and you'll see it'll be expanded from there. The big thing we talked about, I think, once before was the Fluvanna station futures, land acquisition, George Greene, 29 going. That's proceeding based. The diligence has not revealed anything, and last night we authorized $6 million on anticipation notice of funding. Those are actually interested in council because of the possibility that we would be selling it or parts of it down the road to business entities that might need to locate there. So that lot us with no choice but to do an excellent solid anticipation of 5 years intended to allow time for things to sort out before figuring out what's going to happen. There are a lot of discussions with state and others about the campus that's been proposed. And we need to. We also authorized 118 million tax exempt 20 bonds, and those are just market conditions, funding, some things that should have been done probably last year, and some things that would have been done next year. And otherwise, I guess I would say we've been working on our comprehensive plan, so it's presentation last night about what we call phase 2. We talked about activity centers in the development areas. We talked about criteria for expanding the development areas, very controversial topic. We talked about our crossroads communities and most in rural areas where there are communities and whether these would have additional development or services, and then 2 interchanges that got discussed because most of the 64 interchanges of Albemarle County don't have a lot, and that's probably one thing except that Chadwell and Nancy Mills already have some commercial activity, and so there's by right activity there. So we're to study what could be done further with those intersections. Last thing I guess is the discussion of our development fees, and realize that in comparison to many other counties, we have twice as many individual fees as just about anybody else, and they found a way to, maybe it wasn't twice as many as everybody else, but they found a way to basically consolidate and streamline and get that down to half, and so that's sort of being worked through the discussion about that. All right.
When did we get July was the last time this night? June, it's been July, August. July, the Regional Housing Partnership hosted a work session around Albemarle County affordable housing incentives. It was the first part of the conversation was around rental units, and then the second part of the conversation was around home ownership, and then there was a networking session in between that is recorded, so if it's something or a topic you'd be interested in. There's about 20 people around the table represented by developers, stakeholders, members of the Regional Housing Partnership. And it was a pretty robust discussion, especially for the rental side. So if you want to hear developers speak to what they see as incentives that could help achieve affordable housing piece, that was quite a bit of what was discussed there. Same for the homeownership piece. That's on the TJPDC Regional Housing Partnership site. So you can go watch that. And that will turn into a session with the Albemarle County Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors in the fall, where a smaller group from that body will come work session with those two bodies, and then leading us to finally getting our developer incentive stuff together so that our housing policy can no longer be on hold basically until that topic is handled. So that's a big deal that happened over the summer. And the other big one is what the CPD is doing in the smart scale. So that kind of, I would say it caught us off guard. It was definitely a surprise when the NPO got the first presentation of it. So, you know, the CPD is doing what they're doing, and I definitely would go in there and get up to speed on that. Transportation and smart scale is important to your account. And scan the site button. The one thing that it sounds like especially on the surface, that Bike Ed is going to get basically removed, but for funding in the bigger picture things. But I think really what it is that people have been throwing Bike Ed at every project because they scored higher. So you have Bike Ed facilities that aren't necessarily high impact. And they're trying to make sure that the dollars go to high impact things and not just having high scoring elements thrown into an application to help get whatever is the priority. So like, if you're still interested in a big, high, multimodal type of transportation project, you'll definitely have to submit that to the locality, the TJPDC, and the NPO will be able to submit those. So the transportation secretary back at VACO in November made a comment about unused bike lanes and projects. So it was interesting that I keep saying this in meetings that I trace back and remember him saying that, and now the CBD is reducing and re-rating things that are moving away from bike and ped. So I'll be fascinated to see where it lands. Economic development is the thing they're going to be talking about tonight at the September meeting. So that's an important one, how that gets reweighted and all that. That's all the two things. And we did have the NPO came and gave a presentation to the Albemarle County Board last night. And Sandy's got it down because she's been doing it. There'll be multiple. She'll come again after the September one. So if it's something that you feel like that, I would recommend that. Talk with Christine and she'll set it up. You can have a presentation to your board if you felt it important. Fluvanna County.
Well, I mean, we had a very exciting meeting yesterday, highlighted by David being there giving his presentation. But we adopted the per megawatt rate for solar scale utility type of projects. That was one of the things that we accomplished. We had a lot of discussion about some zoning, we had a zoning text amendment that we proposed a few weeks back, and community came out and convinced that, you know, by right, that Lake Monticello would turn into a whole bunch of duplexes. No, that wasn't the case, and prohibited by the HOA. And the zoning text amendment was just to increase the density from 2.9 to 5. I think what we're trying to do there in R4. Technically, you can do the same thing in R3, but you know, that's. You have to apply for a special use permit to do that. So it was a tricky type of thing. I was kind of, I don't want to use the word spot zoning, but it affected a number of people when the zoning change would happen in 1992. And so we were trying to address that countywide and also solve the problem for those people that were affected, but they are still affected. And so it did not pass, and the anti-growth people came out and tried to prove that. You know, we're getting a lot of misinformation, a lot of just wrong information out there. It doesn't matter what you say, it just comes down to a lot of people being there and whether or not your supervisors are gonna stand up and, you know, do what's best for the county, or they're gonna cave into the public. That just happens sometimes. I didn't think it was gonna happen, so I was surprised by the point. Let's see what else have we had. We have continued projects happening in the Science Crossroads area, something that I can't talk about, and something that I can say that we broke ground for the warehouse space on Route 15, so that's exciting. Wawa is breaking ground soon, and that's exciting. There'll be some other projects right around there. So finally, Fluvanna County and the Science Crossroads area is going to have some businesses, which will be good. Well, you can, be sure to take a left when you go, take a right, you can shop there. We don't have a meals tax yet, so you save at least, a few cents that way. Well, we don't have a meals tax because we tried to pass it a number of years back and it didn't pass, and it's never gonna wait. I think we get to go there next year, so I suspect it will happen next year, so please hurry up. And then the kind of the bigger sort of partnership use with other counties, James River Water Authority presentation, we signed the amendment. I know that Louisa County did the same thing the night before, which was basically in support of the JRW project with final cost numbers being proposed. And so what started off as a $10 million project moved into a $48 million project for less than 2.5 miles. I think it's maybe 4 miles of pipeline. Just a very tragic story that happened there, but it is what it is, and it also is nice to have it dovetail with the announcement that Louisa made with everyone there, because part of that pipeline is serve the industrial port, the industrial public. So this goes to something that they have. Years. We were somewhat fortunate in the escalated cost because we had negotiated with Dominion when they were looking to address their coal ash bonds. They asked for a special use permit, so they received a rather large profit as directed at managing water. So we use a lot of those profit money stops. So that's a relief to the taxpayers from that standpoint. And I think the date now for James River Water is going to be completed, and water flowing through there is 2026 now. Spring or start on 2026. So again, nearly 4 times the cost, and I think started in 2012, so we were accomplished in 14 years. But that's about it. I still have 2.5 years to go. So.
Thank you. All right, so we are there. The next meeting is October 5th, 2023. And you can see on the agenda what's coming our way, but don't forget that strategic plan draft is in there. If you have questions, comments, feedback, email Christine will work with that. Anything else, Christine? Call just in the meantime. All right, very good. Well, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone. Good meeting.